Thank you. Welcome to the September 9th, 2024 State Health Assessment Steering Committee meeting. Next slide. We are with the Oregon Health Authority Public Health Division. And again, this is the steering committee for the state health assessment. Thank you all so much for taking time to join us in this conversation. Next slide, please. We have closed captions in Spanish available through this link I am dropping in the chat. For folks interested in utilizing closed captions in English, I have some directions visually on the screen. Feel free to reach out to me if you need accommodations for future meetings or any support today. Next slide, please. Oregon Health Authority staff supporting this meeting are me, Jamila Norton, Rose Harding, Victoria Demchuk, and Sarah Boudreau. Next slide, please. I would like to pass it along to our facilitators of this space from the Met Group.
Thanks, Jamila. Hi, everyone. I'm Kirsten Gunst from Metropolitan Group. I'm joined today by my colleagues, Deborah Clark and Kristen Gimbel. For those who are new to this space, just wanted to share that Metropolitan Group is a full-service strategic and creative agency. And we work with clients to build capacity of change agents and to leverage what we call their power of voice. And we do a ton of work in the public health space. So we're working with OHA on this project with supporting meeting facilitation and also strategic support for this process. So it's wonderful to see you all here again today. And we look forward, for those who are able to make it to the in-person meeting next week, we look forward to meeting you in real life. Next slide, and I can run through our agenda. So today we are, in the interest of time, we are going to be doing a brief relationship building activity just in the chat. So I'll share the prompt in just a moment. And as you're able to share out, we would love to hear your thoughts. Jamila is going to provide some updates and follow-up items that came from our August session. We are going to revisit mission, vision, and values. For those of you who have been in the last few meetings, we are very, very close, and we're hoping that we are going to be able to land this today so that, again, in our in-person meeting, we're able to really jump into some activities where we're able to start living the mission, vision, and values and seeing how they really connect to this overall process. We will take a 10-minute break, and then we'll come back together and have a conversation around the SHA and SHIP development. And different members of the OHA staff will be sharing about the purpose of SHA, the timeline, and some key milestones to keep in mind. We have some questions around meeting cadence, and also we'll be discussing some of the work that's being done with subcommittees. And then we also just wanted to share a quick overview of the agenda for the Monday in-person session. If you could go to the next slide, please. We will be sharing a much more detailed agenda very soon with also some background materials. But we have just a reminder, we have an optional dinner on Sunday evening that's more casual, a way for all of us to get to know each other. We'll do some relationship building there. On Monday, we have an 8:30 start time at Metropolitan Group's office, the Public Will Building. We will be spending the first chunk of time, again, doing some relationship building activities that we think are really important to take advantage of this in-person meeting space. We're going to have a lunch hour where we're going to provide some what we're calling gift cards or vouchers that can be used at the cart blocks, which are literally on the same block as Metropolitan Group's office. So they're right there. Again, more details to come in the agenda that we set out. We're going to be in our time together reviewing the starting point assessment and some of the lessons learned from the SHIP implementation. We're also going to be doing a deeper dive into the key health indicators and the data review. And just to plug, again, more details coming out, but we'd love for you to review the 2019 SHA prior to this conversation, so you have that background. And as always, please share any questions in the chat, follow up with any questions following this as you receive more details about our time together next week. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions or concerns. And with that, actually, I'll pause and see, OHA, is there anything you wanted to add to the in-person meeting agenda session overview?
This is Jamila. No.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to Deborah.
Thank you, Kirsten. As always, just want to revisit our group agreements, a reminder that these agreements were created at the very beginning of the process as we share this space together. We always and continue to welcome feedback or additional agreements for consideration. So the first agreement that we have is lean forward, lean back, share space. Allow room for differing opinions. Do not be afraid to share your perspective whatsoever, whether that's audible via the chat, via other channels. Please, we want this to be a judgment-free zone. Curiosity is queen. Be open to continuous learning along the way. Explain and unpack jargon and acronyms. We use a lot of them, so we are committed to unpacking that jargon. Be present, be authentic. I know there's a lot of things that are going around, so just be as present and authentic as you can. Show up as fully as you can in the way that feels most comfortable for you. Honor all experiences and expertise. We appreciate others as human beings with abundant and interconnected experiences. And last but not least, extend grace to each other and to ourselves and assume best intentions. And I'll kick it back over to Kirsten.
Thanks, Deborah. Actually, I'm going to hand it over to Jamila to provide some updates from our August meeting.
Good morning. This is Jamila. So updates from August. Some of the things that came up in our last meeting were folks were interested in having a debrief meeting. We did host a debrief meeting the day after the last meeting, and we had a couple folks show up, and I would say a really great conversation happened in that space. And it was very helpful for us. And many thanks to folks who joined us that day and shared your insights. I have put an optional calendar hold on all of the steering committee members' calendars for tomorrow at noon in case folks are interested in joining a debrief about today's conversation. Another action from last time was I've started having one-on-ones with committee members. I'm working down a list, so if I haven't reached out to you yet, it will happen soon. Having some great conversations. Many thanks to folks about that. We also had our first community engagement subcommittee, and that committee was established and met for the first time. We had a robust conversation and lots to discuss in that space. Our next meeting for that is on Wednesday at noon. So there are a couple noon meetings, my apologies, for this work this week. Additionally, one of the topics that came up in July that we met offline about a little bit and provided some updates about last month was about including the term tribes in our mission. And I just wanted to confirm that we are on the meeting we committed to presenting at for this Friday. And so we'll get some additional guidance from tribal public health leaders this Friday, and hope to have future updates available in October about their preferences in being involved with the mission of the state health assessment. Those are the formal updates from August. Feel free to reach out and let me know if you have any questions or thoughts. We're also going to continue tracking these and other topics on our issue topic tracker that will go out with each meeting. Holding a pause for questions or thoughts. Okay, very good. I will transition over to our facilitators.
Hey, everybody, this is Kristen Gimble. I just want to encourage you all to continue to share in the chat. I'm seeing some more of your favorite places populate in there, so feel free to continue to drop them in as I'm talking. It's really fun to see what brings you all energy in some of your favorite places. As you all may remember, Kristen Gimble with the Metropolitan Group team, I use she, her pronouns. To introduce myself with a visual introduction. I have brown hair, wearing blue glasses. I'm in my 40s, wearing a green blazer today and have a blurred out background. It's really great to be with you all. And as Kirsten shared at the beginning, in her tee-up of today, our intention is to land our mission, vision, values work so that we can really get into living it, both in the in-person time that we'll have together later this month and for the duration of this process. So for the benefit of folks who maybe are newer to this group or missed the last meeting, I'm going to do a very brief recap just because I want to bring everyone into the space on the same plane. And then we're going to jump into some consensus-based voting and adoption. Those of you who were here last week probably remember, or excuse me, last month probably remember that in a previous meeting, we adopted the mission pending the conversations about how we articulate the language and the relationship with Indigenous communities in the state. And there's a conversation going on later this week to continue to explore and dialogue on that front. So we're not going to be in discussion about mission today, but we will share an update coming out of that conversation to keep everybody looped in. You can move to the next slide if you would. This is the mission. We can go one more here. On the vision front, which we're going to focus on today, along with our values, we spent some time in May and June and a little bit in August, creating some space to share and revise together in real time, and inviting folks in between meetings to also reflect on the latest and greatest version of the mission, and to offer feedback as well. So we've had 3 or 4 sessions together and a handful of opportunities for folks to weigh in otherwise to inform the vision so far. In a moment, we'll talk about values, and likewise, we spent some time in May and June and some time in August talking about values, though I know that not everybody in their breakout rooms had time to fully dive into values. I know we had a little bit of a shorter runway in the last meeting, but again, some good discussions that have led us to this moment where we're moving towards adoption. In order to build consensus today, we're going to introduce the FIST to 5 consensus method. I imagine some of you have used it before or are at least familiar with it. This method is often used in community organizing or community-driven policy co-creation as an alternative to majority voting or other approaches that are really binary, right? I either like this or I don't like it. And we know that it's impossible to capture all of the exact language or the tone that any one of you might draft if you were writing this yourself, right? So we're trying to land in a place together collectively, where everyone sees the spirit of what they've contributed reflected in the vision and the mission, the vision and the values that we ultimately land with. So that even if you don't love where it lands, you may like it and even be able to live with it, right? I'm going to explain how the FIST to 5 works if you haven't used it before. And as I'm doing so, I just want to acknowledge the FIST component. The FIST component is really a symbol for zero, sort of a no vote. I can't support this. The FIST is intended to be connected with solidarity. I don't like the violent overtones within it, so I'm going to propose we call this the donut to 5 process. Maybe I'm hungry or have a sweet tooth. We can come up with another name, but we're going to roll with that for today if you all will indulge me. Typically in a process like this, we would be in person, right? We'd be sitting across the table from each other, and we would be physically raising our hand or our fingers to demonstrate our level of support or resonance for what we're ultimately voting on. Because we're not in person today, we're going to use the chat. So I'm going to walk you through each of the options for the consensus-based voting using this method. And I'm going to ask my team to drop it in the chat so you all can follow along if you would. And then we're going to jump into specifically the vision statement and some voting there. So again, in this context, if we're voting with a donut, that means no, I can't support this. Usually that means that you're objecting based on some moral grounds or maybe some integrity grounds. You just can't support a word or a phrase. If you hold up one finger, you put a 1 in the chat, that means I don't like this, but it's not quite a no, right? I think that there's some work we can do here, and I have some ideas about how we can improve it. That would give me a higher vote when I'm sharing my opinion. I don't think we're going to have any fists or ones today because, as we said at the beginning, we've been through this a few times. Folks have really weighed in. Hopefully you all feel like your voice has really been anchored here, and that the feedback that you've given has really informed how we're shaping and refining. But we do just want to hold space just in case there's anything that's coming up for folks. 2 fingers means I don't like this very much, but I'm going to go along with it, right? Again, that spirit of consensus. 3 means I'm in the middle somewhere. I like some of it, but not all. 4 means that's fine. I can support it. And 5 means I like this a lot. Y'all nailed this. This is great, right? Thank you for putting that in the chat. I want to just hold space for any questions or clarifications before we go through the vision. And so I'll do a quick recap here. We're going to share the vision, which you can see here on the screen. I'll, in a moment, point out a couple of key changes that came up in the last meeting. And then we want to open it up for a vote using this proposed consensus-based method and ask everybody to weigh in with one of those numbers or a donut. So before we do that, I'll lift up a couple of key changes and then I'll open it up for any questions or clarifications. You can see here the couple of words that are bolded. In the last meeting, folks said, gosh, we'd really like to see member added after community. That feels really important to anchor it in the individual. And then there was some conversation around access and whether access was appropriate in this context, and a proposal to shift to can obtain, which you also see here reflected. So those are the couple of latest changes coming out of your feedback in our last meeting together. And with that, I want to pause for a moment to just open it up for any questions or clarifications. And then I want to open up our voting. I'm going to take a look in the chat to see if anybody asked any questions in the chat. Rafia, do you have a question? Oh, maybe you just needed to mute. Okay. For what it's worth, it's really fun scrolling through the chat and seeing everybody's favorite places. I'm excited to catch up on that in a little bit. But for now, let's go ahead and open up the voting here. Again, we're looking specifically at the mission statement as it appears on the screen. And our intention here is to move into a group adoption. And we're using this varied form of voting to build some consensus. And our hope is that everybody can see the spirit of the feedback that you shared in this vision statement. So I'm going to go ahead and pause and open it for voting and ask you to drop the number that is really resonating with you into the chat. And Alicia, I see your comment. I really appreciate that. Is your obtain, does that qualify in the one? You've got another suggestion, or you just want to share maybe a two? You don't like it, but you're okay going along.
I'm given the fact that there is a little side note to it, I would probably go with a 3, and I think I've mentioned my hesitation a few times before, even in the debrief session. The obtain feels very much like the onus is on the people again, rather than, or the people accessing the services or people needing the services, rather than the system making it to where people can actually access services. And that was a very strong, I guess, hesitation that I had. But for the purposes of moving forward, because it's been a long time, a lot of things that we've been working on, I am absolutely okay with, as long as this little side note stays and is part of the vision statement, then I am okay with it.
I really appreciate that, Alicia. Thank you. Hearing that you're voting a 3 for this one and noting your hesitation with the word obtain, and that it's important to keep the asterisk for all the reasons that you just lifted up. Thank you so much. Seeing a couple of other votes in the chat here. Again, to move towards adoption here, just for sake of context, folks voting 3s or higher, and even a 2 actually moves this into adoption. So we do want to make sure that everyone's voices are here in terms of supporting this. So I'm just going to create some space for folks to reflect for a moment and drop into the chat. Thank you for those of you who have already weighed in.
This is Julia. Is it okay if I chime in?
Please do. Please do.
Okay. So I apologize because obviously we've gone over and over and over this. And it just struck me today that this feels like we're not speaking to people that live outside of a community, that might live like, I don't know where, but sort of more on their own, on the outskirts somewhere. I know they're out there. So I mean, I still, as you see, I still voted a 3 for this. Just something to think about. There's probably a reason we didn't say resident, but that came up for me today. Thanks.
I really appreciate it, Julia. I'm hearing a 3 vote with a side of a 1, and a suggestion there. If I recall, we originally had this as each Oregonian, and then had some great conversations about citizenship and the degree to which that was as inclusive as it should be, for folks who may be living here but not identify as an Oregonian. I don't recall whether we talked about the specific use of resident. And so certainly if someone else feels strongly and wants to lift that up as a suggestion, we could do a revote here with that included. and get some consensus from the group that way if you feel strongly about that. I don't want to put you on the spot, Julia, but I do want to hold some space if this feels important enough for you to revisit your vote.
Only if anyone else has a similar thought.
Anyone else want to chime in with some TJ?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm on my boss's computer, so it looked like I was her for a second. So thank you for the note that said, please change your name to who you are and not who. So I guess I'm just struggling again with the fact that I'm just reading some of these other folks' conversation in the chat about the language itself, and to me it just doesn't seem to jive too well with me, especially that first couple of words of the sentence. Each community member in Oregon can obtain. I don't know, something just doesn't sit right with me there when it comes to saying community member. I don't know what this was originally. I don't remember. It seems like it's been, I don't know how long ago, but I don't remember what this stated originally. Is this how the original first statement started off, by saying each community member? That to me just doesn't, I don't know, that doesn't seem to tickle my fancy, so to speak. And I'm also reading somebody's, wondering about the language and how people may read this. Again, I don't know how many people will read this, but I'm sure it's not going to be, I want to make sure that it encompasses everybody and not just people who we think can read it and are okay with it. So that's my biggest issue right now. I could touch on other issues that, but I just don't. I get it, what we're trying to get across, but to me, it just doesn't seem like we're getting it across in the right way. So I may be the only person in that boat, but again, just those first couple words for me, it just doesn't jive or sit well with me. So I guess I might have to just stew and think about. I had somebody in here. I apologize that I'm the boss today too, before I go do some other stuff. And I had a worker come in with some complaints that I needed to listen to. So I've been trying to multitask. For those of you who hold multiple jobs, you know that sometimes multitasking isn't as easy as you think. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm sitting right now. So.
TJ, thank you so much for that feedback. I think you probably missed this. I shared probably while you were multitasking. This did originally say each Oregonian, and I think it said each Oregonian in the state or something like that. There was good discussion around citizenship and the degree to which folks may or may not identify with an Oregonian, depending on their citizenship status or any other relationship with the state they might have. And so that's why it was changed to community member. We are using a format of voting, consensus voting. You can see in the chat here. I think you are potentially offering a suggestion for an alternative phrasing here, in which case we would open that up if you have an idea. If you can live with this, then we're voting to move it forward based on the consensus vote so far. Hannah, I see you have a question, and TJ, maybe I'll give you a moment to think about any suggestions that you might have.
Yeah, so I'm totally new, but for me, community member really vibes, but I saw Julia put in there resident,
Mhm.
and I think I do think resident is a good idea as opposed to what it was previously. So I do like resident, but but also I vibe with community member. But I guess it does alienate people who don't feel like they're a part of the community. I guess that would be the problem with that word. Because I could see community as just being a resident of Oregon. But yeah, so Julie, I do like that. So that was just my comment.
Okay, I'm just watching the chat here. It looks like we've got the most resonance We're using the word resident in a revote here. I want to hold a little space for any other suggestions that folks want to lift up, and then we can go ahead and do a re-consensus vote.
Kristen, I'm just gonna say that I guess I'll hold my two fingers up or give it a two, so to speak, but I'm, again, I mean, it's just maybe the way I'm reading it, but obviously I just don't, to me, it just doesn't sit right, but obviously we need to be moving forward and not standing still, I guess, so to speak. So, I would just hope that, because again, community member could, theoretically encompasses everybody, but not realistically, I guess. So I'm just trying to find a word that encompasses every single heart that's beating in Oregon.
Yeah.
Rather than just being a community member, I guess is how I think about it. Is I would much rather find a word or some saying that everybody who physically breeds in Oregon will have this opportunity rather than just being a community member. So that's just how I feel. So I'll give you a two and I'll shut up. So
we certainly don't want you to shut up, TJ. I really appreciate that perspective. And there's some good resonance with what you're sharing in the chat. Folks are talking a little bit more about person. Each person in Oregon can obtain as something that might be a better solution, so that it isn't defined around how are we talking about resident and what do we mean by member. But each person, each living, breathing human person can obtain affordable, appropriate, and adequate resources, et cetera. It looks like that has some good resonance in the chat. With that shift, each person in Oregon and the maintaining of the asterisk, I'd like to ask folks to re-vote here because I think we may have a consensus, and I want to just gut check that with the group. So if you can share your
Kristen,
feedback. Yes.
sorry, it's Julia. Just real quick. How about each person living in Oregon?
Okay. I see your note in the chat here. Each person living in Oregon. Okay. Alicia, seeing that was your thought too. Okay. All right. So I'm going to put on the floor, each person living in Oregon can obtain, et cetera. And ask that each of you vote again. So that we can gut check that that's resonating with everyone and move this vision statement into adoption. Give you a moment to reflect and drop in the chat. Thank you for all of you voting. And Emily, thanks so much for your comment. Yeah, and hearing just some themes around still feeling a little bit of discomfort around the personal responsibility versus systems change. And I know that to many of you that can obtain is still a little bit challenging, but it sounds like you all can live with it with the asterisk there. I believe everyone has weighed in at this point, and happy to see that we've moved towards some more 4s and 5s in this final voting. Unless anyone who hasn't voted wants to weigh in on any final comment, I think we can move this one forward to adoption. And maybe we can come off mute and cheer a little bit because this has been a journey. I want to thank everybody for your really great insight and really thoughtful perspective to this. We're here. Congratulations. We have a vision. The silent applause, I can't see everybody, but I'm seeing some applause and some smiles, and that feels good. Thank you so much, everybody. With that, I want to move us to values. And because we have the values here on a couple of slides, and there's a little bit more text, I do want to make sure that we're taking adequate time to have folks just kind of reground themselves in the values before we jump into the consensus voting process. So we're going to keep this one up here for a moment, and then we'll switch to the second slide to show the other couple of values. Similar to the vision statement, what you see bolded here reflects specific language and feedback from all of you as committee members. Specifically in the last round or the round before that, the things that really felt important to you or that you needed to see in order to support moving these values forward. And I'll just add one more note and then I'll let folks sink into this. For those of you that are newer on this journey with us, the reason there are a couple bullets under each of these values is because we really wanted to work together to think about not just naming a value, right? But also thinking about how is it going to manifest in the context of this process? How are we going to hold each other accountable, OHA, other partners accountable to really living these values in this process? And what is it going to look like when we're doing that? So that's why we have some language here that is intended to articulate, this is how these values are going to live in this process. And with that, I'll give you a couple of moments here to read through these two, and then we'll switch. Okay, let's go ahead and switch to the next slide if we can. Okay. Alicia, I'm seeing your comment here in the chat. Let's go back to the first slide here if we can. My intention with these values is to have us vote on them as a group. But Alicia, I do want to give you a moment if you have any suggestions on the equity value statement, or if anyone else, if Alicia's comments resonate with anyone else that might want to provide a suggestion, I invite that at this point. Okay. One thing I just want to note here, and I will open it up for the OHA team for a little feedback. I recall in the transparency value, there were some questions and some interest in clarity about the bi-monthly memo and sort of what that would include and how we're going to distribute it and how do we really make sure that folks are being looped in appropriately and inclusively to this process. If I recall, there was going to be some additional conversations about that and how OHA and y'all as a steering committee would update folks. If that's the case, I might propose that we strike this pending that determination, and then we can add in whatever decision is made in terms of how we might share out updates. But I want to gut check that with Jamila or anyone on the OHA team.
This is Jamila. I was taking attendance. Could you repeat the prompt for me and anyone else who maybe was chewing some lunch?
Sure, and I'll also apologize for unintentionally calling you in here. under the transparency value, I know we had some conversations about, what would the share out look like? Is the bi-monthly memo appropriate? How are we distributing it? Just some really good questions from the steering committee members. So it doesn't feel like we're quite to a space of clarity there, pending some conversations with folks in this space, and wondering if we maybe want to strike that second bullet under transparency until we have some more clarity, informed by this group about what that might look like.
This is Jamila. I support whatever y'all want to do. My verbal update that I forgot to give, I'm very sorry, is the Met Group, as part of their contract for working with us, is going to take a lead on that task. So we have a person or persons with capacity assigned to that task. So I anticipate blue skies ahead in the Met Group producing and sending out via us a memo every other month talking about the work we've done together. But happy to strike it, happy to do whatever.
Okay. Thanks, Jamila. I appreciate that.
And there is a draft sitting in my inbox. I had a plague from a toddler last week, and I'm the reason it's me. I apologize. So I look forward to getting that out soon.
Thank you, Jamila. Okay, I'm seeing some the spectrum of perspectives here on the equity value in particular. And Sadie, I'm also seeing your comment here about being so descriptive about the transparency value, that second bullet. I'm feeling similarly, so I think that can be something that we, the group, could decide. We want to strike for now, and as I said, go back and add when we have more clarity on what that might look like. Cheryl, I appreciate your excitement to get in here and vote. I would like to initiate the voting here. And before I do, Annie, I see you have your hand up and I want to invite you in.
Thank you. I have a quick question. Is the self-determined on equity, second bullet point, should priorities address the self-determined, meaning like what individuals or members of the community identified?
Exactly. If I recall, when we were drafting that, the intention there was to say that nobody at the state or anywhere else should be deciding sort of what communities need. We should really be listening, and communities and individuals themselves should be telling us. And so self-determined was kind of a shorthand way of articulating that.
Okay. Thank you. I was just thinking like how it read. So I just wanted clarity. Thank you.
You bet. And Alicia, just seeing your note here in the chat, I agree wholeheartedly. I think we should propose that the value statements are updated to reflect the language that has been adopted by this group, both in the mission and vision so far. Okay. I do want to open this up. I want to open the floor. Again, I want to underscore the consensus method of voting that we're using here. We recognize that there's a lot of words here. There's a lot of nuance in here, that you may not see everything exactly as you might have framed it. What we're hoping for is that this best reflects the spirit of what you want to bring into the space and the guiding values that should really anchor this work. And we'll go ahead and drop in the voting scale, the donut to 5 scale into the chat again, just to push it to the top there. If anyone is feeling really strongly on moral or integrity lines, that you have an issue with any of the language here, that's where I would encourage you to enter a 1, and then we can break into some discussion about what we might want to modify. So with that, we're going to drop the donut to 5 scale here in the chat and open it up and give you all a few minutes to reflect. We'll create a couple of minutes here on slide 1, and then we can toggle to slide 2. We just move to slide 2 in case anybody is interested in checking that out. Thank you so much. Okay. I am seeing majority 3s, 4s, and maybe a 5 in there. I did see Alicia, you're 1, so I would like to hold some space for you to propose a revision. And then TJ, just noting your 2 vote here as well. Alicia, can I open it up for a proposed amendment that you might have?
I think given that I wasn't able to really look at it until earlier today with a sick kid, with having a sick kid this weekend and today, I think I don't necessarily have an overall revision yet, or a proposed revision. But there are 2 things that I'm struggling with. I'm struggling a lot with, and under the equity statement, I think it is very convoluted and filled with a lot of big words, which kind of in the work that I do outside of the space really flies in complete contradiction to what equity is.
I hear that.
So in terms of equity, right, everybody should be able to understand what this means. I highly doubt that everybody is going to be able to understand what this equity statement means. So the wording itself, it being so convoluted, I think only people who work within the space, system folks who work particularly within kind of the equity realm are gonna know what this means.
I hear that. Yeah.
So I am struggling a lot with this one. Again, when we're talking about equity, it should mean that we all understand what this means. And I do not think that everybody that reads this or who is going to read this is going to understand what this statement means. So I don't know how else to to explain it, other than being this kind of frank. And the other pieces under accountability, under collaboration, I'm sorry. It's the part where it says collective responsibility for public health outcomes. The collective responsibility piece, that particular phrase, I don't know what that means in terms of public health outcomes. Again, given the fact that I also engage in other areas of advocacy and independent consulting, collective responsibility means something else in different areas.
Yep.
Also, given the fact that we know that OHA can only basically focus on the things that OHA is responsible for, right? I wonder how the term collective responsibility is actually going to help with collaborating with other agencies, because OHA cannot tell other agencies what to do, and therefore they also can't necessarily then, when we go up, hold them accountable. So my question is, for this part, is what does collective responsibility mean in this thing? Because I think the overall sentence would also make perfect sense without having that term collective responsibility in it, because there's a shared purpose. But I'm not quite sure. Those are just the two things that everything else I'm able to live with, especially in terms of the populations and communities that I interact with. I think I'm able to live with it. But those two things I feel very strongly about.
I hear you and really appreciate both of those, Alicia. I'll reflect one at a time, and then I want to open it up for a little discussion by the group. First, on the equity front, agree wholeheartedly. Absolutely, it should be accessible. I think this is a perfect example when we have a group write something, right? The components of it become more complex, with everybody wanting to put a phrase or a sentiment in there that's particularly meaningful to them or to a community that they represent. So I agree. I think that we should absolutely make that accessible. There's some resonance in the chat from others who are also feeling that way. I don't think that this is the right venue to do that. I might propose that we take that offline. Either Metropolitan Group can take a swing at making it more plain speak and bring just that description back to the group. Or if anyone who's here is interested in proposing something that we can bring back to the group, I would welcome that as well. But I'm going to propose that we table that for now, just given that trying to do that with this big of a group might be pretty tough. On the collective responsibility, these words came from you all. So I wonder if there's anyone here for whom that really meant something that might want to share some perspective. Otherwise, I personally agree with Alicia that I think it works without having collective responsibility in there. And I think if others agree, we could move to strike that and approve and adopt it without collective responsibility in there. Could we move back to the second slide so folks can see it in context? So just for reference for folks, Alicia's second comment was on the first bullet there under collaboration. If anyone felt really strongly who lifted up or included collective responsibility in here, certainly want to open the floor. Otherwise, I think we may have some resonance for removing it and voting on it without that in the statement. Okay. Hearing no reaction one way or another, I'm going to put on the floor for voting that we vote for the 3 out of the 4 values and move those forward with a commitment to revise how equity is written so that it is both accessible and asset-based, and come back to the group specifically with a revised definition for that at the top of our next time together. And that we move the transparency, accountability, and collaboration values into a consensus vote, with the collaboration value not having collective responsibility included, struck from that one. So with that, I would love to open up the floor for some voting, unless anyone else who hasn't weighed in and has a 1 and feels really strongly would like to do so.
This is Jamila. I heard you say that we might do this the next time we're together. The next time we're together is the in-person next Monday. So I just want to flag and acknowledge, is this what you would like to use your in-person time and space for, or potentially part of the October meeting? Or potentially a subgroup has a conversation and reports back. I would just like to present a couple options.
I appreciate that flag, Jamila. Personally, I think it would be ideal if our intention as facilitators, and I know the OHA team is very excited to move into our in-person meeting with an adopted set of values. So my preference, I appreciate you reminding me, Jamila, that is coming up pretty quickly. My preference would be that for anyone interested, they could contribute to a revised version that we could share out to the group in between now and the in-person session. So that we do have an adopted set of values going into that session. Also happy for MG to simply take a spin at revising that and share it out with everyone for one final round of feedback. But I do think we should go into that session having the values adopted.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mika, go ahead.
Hi, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So I just want to point out that I think Alicia's making a great point here in terms of accessibility. And so I just wanted some clarification about what are the processes and how are you assessing documents for accessibility? Because this is going to come up over and over again throughout the work, and there should be some guidelines set going forward. Otherwise, this is going to continue to come up. And I think that it is a very good point that we need to make sure things are accessible and in plain language, and there's a variety of ways to assess that. So I'm just curious what the standard is going to be going forward. And then I was also going to say that if we obviously can agree or to the spirit of the values and the things that are saying, if we could just all vote on that, so that, and then if there would be a commitment to bring it back in a more plain language version. But I can see this could be a sticking point for many things coming up. So I just wanted to appreciate what Alicia said there and wondering what our plan is going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Mika. Really appreciate that question. I can speak to the process moving forward, but OHA, do you want to share specifically on the accessibility standards and the typical processes that you all use?
This is Jamila. Sarah, would you like me to take a go at it, or would you like to answer with your experience?
Why don't you just go ahead, Jamila? Thank you.
This is Jamila. So as I understand it, there are a couple things in play here. So this writing is not a document composed by OHA staff that goes through OHA staff accessibility practices. The committee can request that this go through some readability and plain language filters and work that can be requested by the committee. But no, this was written by the MET group and the committee. Period. Second point, the typical accessibility and plain language work we do, for example, when we write the state health assessment, we have a whole process where it goes through our publications team, and that takes months and months and months to go through that. And like the old version of the state health assessment has gone through the publications, which has, I believe, some plain language efforts, but ultimately it's up to the committees and the team that's working on this to do some of that work. Does that provide an answer? So no, this has not gone through a plain language working because this was material written by the committee, not written by OHA staff, and it feels inappropriate, unprompted to do that. If the committee would like some reworking of that, that could be something that y'all propose and we can see if we can do.
Thanks, Jamila. I think that makes perfect sense. And I agree. I mean, it's certainly after these values are adopted and the committee is aligned with the spirit of these values, before there's any public visibility alongside the plan and any other documents associated with this work, we could absolutely ensure accessibility for these values, mission and vision. For the purposes of today and recognizing our time, I'd like to propose this, that we move to vote on adoption for the value statements as a group with 2 caveats. One, a caveat that, and thank you, Alicia and Emily, for volunteering, that the Met Group team will team with Alicia and Emily to ensure that the equity value, the spirit of the equity value, is revamped to ensure accessible language. And then 2, that under the collaboration value, we strike collective responsibility. So I'd like to ask you all to weigh in on your vote with those 2 caveats. Again, with an eye towards everyone seeing the spirit of the values as they're described in a way that you like and or can live with. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the voting now. And Mika, just seeing your note as well. Thank you. Would love to include you.
This is Jamila. Using a plain language health education strategy, I want to repeat back what I'm understanding. So is that the Met Group is going to gather folks and work on creating plain language efforts with committee members who are interested in creating plain language versions of this? Not to put you on the spot. I'm just trying to follow and understand and repeat back what I understand next steps are.
I'm proposing just for the equity value, that anyone who is interested would be welcome to offer suggestions and or participate in a short conversation or work session to move the equity value into plain language. I think we still have on the table the processes and the moments when we would all want to look at everything through an accessible lens. And we can continue to have conversations on that.
Thank you.
Does that sound okay to you, Jamila?
Pardon? Thank you for clarifying.
Sure, sure. All right, I am seeing some great consensus here. Again, just a quick recap, we have moved into adopting these values. Thank you all so very much. Pending the 1 deletion on collaboration and a revised accessible language version of the equity as it is described. Thank you all so very much, again, for a really rich and important discussion. And Annie, also seeing your note in here around interest. So Alicia, Mika, Emily, and Annie, we can circle back with you all to engage you in that accessible language rewrite. Congratulations, y'all. It's been a journey. I imagine, like me, you feel like we've been talking about this for a while, and I hope you also feel like it has been time well spent, given the importance and the scaffolding that this will serve throughout our process and time together to shape the ship. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jamila and the OHA team.
This is Jamila. Kudos, y'all. Kudos. Yeah, let's take a 10-minute break and then we will gather back together to have more discussion about some of our milestones, purpose, next steps, and data we're going to be working through. My computer is, we're going to call it 12. Let's come back at 2:17. 2:17, and we'll spend the remainder of the time talking about purpose and data. Thank you. We'll see you at 2:17. Deb, if you'd be willing to play some rockin' jams, we'd love it.
But only if they're rocking.
I cannot make any promises.
They can be swinging.
You never steer us wrong, Deb.
Yo. 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 Yo.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back. If you're back in front of your computer, if you could either turn on your video or give a thumbs up in the chat or on your screen, that would be fantastic. And we can pick up the next part of our agenda. Great. Thank you, everyone. All right. Jamila, am I turning this section over to you?
Hi, I think we might actually be turning it over to me.
Thank you, Sarah.
Sure. And good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Boudreau. I use she and her pronouns. I am a manager in the Office of the State Public Health Director and a member of your OHA team that's supporting this work. So I'm going to talk about the work in front of us. One thing for a few different reasons. I'm really hoping that this information that I share over the next few slides will start to answer some of the questions that we know a lot of you have had about where are we going and how are we going to get there, and really let you help to clarify what will be asked of all of you and also where your key decision points are, and help steering committee members think about how best you want to use your time during the meetings. So I think one thing I want to share right on this slide before we even get started is that this group, the Shaw Steering Committee, is responsible for more than conducting the state health assessment or developing that report. This group is really responsible for work through the development of our next state health improvement plan. So your name may feel a little bit incomplete or misleading, because you will do more than conduct a state health assessment and make sure that OHA publishes a report. This is something we talked about in very early meetings back in April, but many of you weren't there, so it felt really important to go back to that. Given our timelines, this work to develop the state health assessment and then develop the next state health improvement plan will take us through about September of 2025. So really for the next year. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit specifically about the state health assessment here, and then I'm going to talk about the path in front of us, really lay out the overall process and highlighting some of the tensions that are in there around time, but a whole lot of other tensions that we're all holding in this work. I think I've already said I am going to just talk for a few minutes. I apologize for that. I welcome interruptions either in the chat or raised hands or just out loud for anything that comes up, but we'll definitely have time to discuss. So the state health assessment, talking a little bit about the purpose and what it actually is. And if the person that's controlling the slides could click again, I think some animations will come up. Thank you very much. The state health assessment is a point in time report on the health status of people in the state of Oregon. It is a report filled with other reports, and I can talk more about that in just a minute. But the state health assessment is intended to bring attention to health issues in Oregon and what people in Oregon see as the most urgent priorities, also what they see as the assets within their community that help them get to health. The state health assessment also considers how well our public health system is prepared to do the work that communities want us to be doing to address those health issues. And it provides really critical information that this steering committee will use then to develop the next state health improvement plan. So some of the different pieces of the state health assessment puzzle. First, state population health indicators. So really looking at our current data on health of people in Oregon. Modernization capacity assessment and the public health system workforce assessment, those bottom pieces of the puzzle, are bodies of work that are happening that help us to understand how prepared our system is to accomplish what communities need us to accomplish for them. For those of you who work on your local community health assessment and community health improvement plan, I think those CHAs and CHIPs also fit in here as really important data sources that we can look to when talking about the state of health overall in Oregon. And as we develop the state health assessment, we will be engaging communities to get their feedback on the health data that OHA has and on what communities, the story that communities would like us to be telling and what they would like to see us prioritizing as important health issues in Oregon. So for those of you who work on your local community health assessments, the state's approach is a little bit different because we really are trying to use all of the existing information that's already out there and then complement it with new information that communities can provide to us. We don't want to go out and ask communities for information that they've already provided for their community health assessment or for other purposes. So to the extent that we can, we're using what's available and complementing with community and partner feedback. All right, I'm going to do 2 more slides and then stop talking for a minute. This is a lot. This shows our roadmap over the next year. So I'm going to take a minute and walk through it. First, to orient you, in the upper right hand portion of your screen, there's a little bit of a legend there. So the darker yellow orange color is work where the subcommittee leads. The lighter yellow is where the subcommittee is making, or I'm sorry, the steering committee is making recommendations. And then the points in time along this map that are white are where the steering committee is advising, but OHA leads. So starting in the upper left-hand corner, this work really kicked off in April when we first convened the SHA Steering Committee and did a number of orientation meetings. And the early work for your committee, as you know, has really been to finalize your charter and to focus in on the mission, vision, and values that will guide all of this work moving forward. In September, we're hoping to finalize those mission, vision, values, and also the starting point assessment, which is a piece that you all will be looking at next week when we're all in person. Both of these pieces are very foundational for developing the next state health improvement plan. And the starting point assessment allows us to reflect back on our last state health improvement plan and learn the lessons that we want to carry forward into the next version. From September to December of this year, we will be bringing a lot of data conversations to you all and asking that you help us create the framing for the data that we include in the state health assessment. So really reviewing data, reviewing community and partner feedback that we collect throughout the fall when we're doing community engagement, and helping us craft how we talk about health status and health priorities for communities across the state. Then toward the end of the year, I believe, December, January, the OHA team will start having some early drafts of a state health assessment report for you to look at. We are hoping that you will be ready to finalize or approve the state health assessment in about January, and then OHA will take a couple months to actually publish that report. By about March is our fingers crossed timeline on that one. Let's see. Then the work picks up to develop our next state health improvement plan, really starting with the priorities. So we've conducted a state health assessment that tells us about health and people in Oregon. By February, we will ask you to develop a list of priorities that we may want to use in our next state health improvement plan. Our current State Health Improvement Plan, Healthier Together Oregon, has 5 priorities. You can use those as the starting place. You can add more, you can subtract, you can change, but really we'll ask you to come up with a broad list of potential priorities. Then we will do community and partner feedback to collect feedback on what other groups would like to see as priorities in our next state health improvement plan. All of that information will come back to you. And I want to acknowledge I'm, at a very high level, I'm talking about different communities, and Jamila will definitely share more about community engagement and our more specific plans for that in different venues. Do want to acknowledge again that we have an opportunity to talk with tribal health directors and tribal leaders at the end of this week to ask again how they would like to be part of this entire process and at what points we'll be connecting back with that group as really a key partner in all of this.
This is Jamila, including the mission.
Exactly. So I am, I know that we got very far on vision and values today. We did not talk about the mission because we decided in July to put that on hold. I think it was July, put it on hold until tribal health directors and tribal leaders could have another conversation about how they would like to be represented in those really like critical pieces, early pieces, and how they'd like to be involved throughout the process. Okay. So by about May of next year, we will ask you all to finalize the priorities for our next state health improvement plan. And that's sort of the point right in the middle of this visual that we're looking at. Once we know what our priorities are, then we move into working on what is the work that we will do over the next 5 years to make a difference in those priorities. So it's developing strategies, and it's also developing indicators and measures that tell us about whether we're doing what we said we need to do. So we will be doing another round of community engagement at that point to hear from different groups across the state what strategies, what work, what they would like to see public health doing in their communities to get to those priorities. That'll take us through about July. And in August, being able to really finalize through your steering committee the strategies that will be written into the next state health improvement plan. And then along a sort of parallel track where we'll be working to define all of those measures that go along with the strategies. So our hope is that by about September of next year, we'll have all of the bones, all of the structure in place for our next state health improvement plan. Again, it will take us a few months to publish it all. So by the end of 2025 is when we hope that we'll actually have a published plan that everyone can look to, but we'll have most of the work done by about next September. So the pieces on here, hopefully it helps to show where your steering committee is involved and also to highlight the different areas that will be really engaging with partners and community and the purpose for doing that. And then also how that information comes back to you to support your decision making. All right, I think I'm going to do one more slide and then pause. So this is a different version of what you were just looking at. And I'm not going to go through this entire slide. It's a different format for people that find this easier, but really setting the work out in terms of the phases, what happens currently as we're setting the foundation, what happens throughout phase 2 when we're conducting the state health assessment, what happens during phase 3 while we develop the next state health improvement plan, and all of this in recognition that there is a phase 4 to implement that plan. And We are really already preparing for how we want to come together to make sure that we're set up to have a really big impact in the next 5 years. And for anyone that wants to read this, there are some other pieces that you're going to see on this version. Pull out some work that OHA is doing a little bit behind the scenes, separate from this steering committee, unless you like to, in case you like to have some visibility into those pieces. I think, I do want to touch on some of the tensions in this work. Time is a tension that has been brought up among steering committee members quite a few times. It's a very real tension that we are holding, and we're thinking about how we can do this work to the best of our abilities while staying within the time constraints that OHA has. And quite honestly, the vision and the values are really essential for being able to make decisions about how we do this work and how we have the biggest impact on it. Time is not the only constraint. I mentioned we really want to avoid duplicating work that happens locally within communities. So just the nature of doing a state health assessment that is intended to serve all 4.2 million people in Oregon is different than a community health assessment, and it's a tension that we hold. And I think so within all of this, we really want to continue to hear from you about where you most want to focus within all of this. Knowing that it's a big body of work, and you have some discretion on how you want to use your time together. All right, so we have a couple more slides about ways we can proceed, but I would actually love to just stop for a moment and give steering committee members a chance to reflect on any of this.
I guess I'd like to say that I do appreciate the aspect that you're not redoing the work that the the community health improvements and the community health analysis and the community health improvement plans. That makes a lot of sense to me that we're not redoing that work. We're looking at the bigger picture. So that's just a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. How about others? This was a lot of information kind of put on you all at one moment.
Can you share a little bit on the community and partner engagement roadshow? Is there yeah, obviously this is just kind of an overview, but is there like a certain number of let's say community engagement activities planned?
Yeah, Jamila, do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Yeah, this is Jamila. And we don't necessarily have like numbers, right? Like thou shalt reach 25 community spaces. We're looking for quality and to visit places and spaces where we're welcome and invited and can have ongoing conversations about this. I'm going to actually thank you for like you seeded the question. We're going to, especially in the community engagement subcommittee, like really get into this. And I'm going to share the community engagement draft plan and context of the work, right? Like we have a plan of some of the community specific spaces we'll be visiting. We might go there in person, but different collaboratives, like some of the OHA webinars and meetings and different community meetings that we can see about getting invited to have conversations about the state health improvement plan, or sorry, the state health assessment work we've done, but also really focusing on the state health improvement plan and the work that is to come, and some conversations about strategies. So we don't have a specific number. We're going to get into nitty gritty conversations in the subcommittee space about capacity and some of the real capacity challenges we're facing, and seeing what insights folks have around prioritization and expanded capacity opportunities. So no specific number. It's something we care deeply about, not just doing one and getting a check mark and saying, yes, we hit Southern Oregon. We went to this one community space one time. We're looking to spaces and places where we're welcome, we can share information, and we can come back multiple times over the next like 9 months to continue the conversation. Obviously not dominate the space, but have meaningful engagement and conversation. So we'll definitely get into that in the subcommittee space. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, I like the idea of like ongoing, right? Like revisiting rather than like a one time and done. But I think also thinking of how to simplify that engagement. So rather than like, we're gonna come and meet with you and we have in this conversation, we're gonna kind of post these top 10 questions or 15, like how can it be maybe more about listening to community, right? Like being able to show some of the things that have come up across the state, but especially when you're visiting communities, like they can vary to what their priority is in real time. So making space for that will be ideal. Thank you.
This is Jamila. Thank you for that question and that piece of advice. I think this is going to be an important theme and thing that we discuss, maybe in this space, maybe in the subcommittee space, around like how we listen and how we show up. And some of the feedback I have seen and experienced from community is, if you're coming in and saying you're listening, but you're not going to do anything with it, and we are spending emotional energy giving you this feedback, but you don't have a plan for how you're going to use it, and you're not going to use it in systematic ways, peace out, OHA, we don't need you. So like us being prepared for the feedback that might come is really personally and professionally important for me, is having like transparent and real channels and saying, yeah, if you if you tell us this, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do, here's what we commit to using the data. And I want to be really planful and mindful about that balance and how we show up in community.
Thank you so much, Jamila. And I think our next slide tees up some of the spaces for the conversation that you're talking about. But Julia, I see your hand is raised, and then Alicia.
I had a question on a different topic of this
Sure.
timeline. So if Alicia wanted to chime in on the same topic, I just wanted to open the space for her.
Thank you. No, I'm just I guess I'm just trying to figure out what it means. Maybe this is a conversation that needs to happen in the subcommittee, the community engagement committee. But what does it mean when you say that that OHA is going to go into the spaces where they're welcomed? Because I mean, what kind of strikes me is that there are certain areas or certain spaces where I am sure OHA is going to be a lot more welcomed compared to some other spaces and areas. in Oregon. So and I would imagine that even in those spaces where it's not necessarily, where OHA is not necessarily as welcomed, like, we're gonna bring the red carpet out and everything for OHA, right? Those are the spaces that we might actually want to go into to get information from the communities, because those are the spaces that OHA typically has not received information from or feedback from, or in any kind of substantive way. And also understanding the fact that there is no land on, I guess, getting new information or new data, and we have to base, or as a committee, we basically have to base everything on existing or current data that we have. And we're using the community engagement to supplement the current data. Would it not be
Yeah.
possible to kind of try to make connections into those areas where OHA is typically not?
Yeah. Absolutely,
Welcomed?
Alicia. And I'm really excited, like, within Jamila's next couple community engagement spaces, she'll be sharing a plan, because sometimes maybe OHA also isn't the right person to go into different communities and so how do we use the funding that we have for community engagement to be providing funding out to different organizations that may want to do that work? So upcoming. Julia, go ahead.
Thank you. In terms of the SHIP, and the SHIP SHIP priorities and SHIP strategies and measures.
Yes.
So this group will be working on those strategies and measures. I'm looking at the last 5-year plan, HTO, and are we talking about this group coming up with, the 20 pages that follow the sort of first
Yeah.
breakdown of populations and priorities?
I think yes and no. So we're not going to ask you to create strategies out of the blue necessarily. We will be working within the public health division and with partners to understand work that's already happening or that should be happening. Um, and that can be a starting point of talking about some strategies that may be effective in getting toward those priorities. But we want you all to have that final responsibility of selecting the strategies that we put in this next plan, and also making sure that we're doing strategies that we can accomplish. I think many of us feel like our current Healthier Together Oregon plan is outside of the scope of what we can do. And let's bring it back to the work that we know we can do and that is important in getting to those priorities. Does
Okay.
that help?
Yeah, I mean, I'm asking because I don't have any nits to pick about like the larger strategies, but in terms of the rest of it, like talking about it, I think there are a lot of gaps.
Mhm.
Particularly, me around older adults.
Absolutely.
So I just, hope I get to have a voice on that. That's all. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I know we're not there yet.
Let's see. Can we do a quick time check? I know we're wrapping up. I don't know how much more we're hoping to cover.
Yeah, Sarah, I was just looking at the agenda and I know we wanted to, I think, touch briefly a little bit on the subcommittees and some of the logistic questions coming up around meetings.
Okay.
And then we also have the data context section, which we only have, we're at 2:48 right now. So we
Okay.
Don't have much time.
All right. Well, I'm going to go really quickly then, and maybe it's just a teaser for these next couple slides. So, hopefully you all are aware that Jamila and Rose are convening some additional spaces. So there's a data ad hoc space starting in October that will go deeper on some of the data conversations. And so you're all aware, like next week when we're in person, we will start that work to go deep around public health data. So we'll have the full spaces here and ad hoc spaces for people who want more conversation around it. We also have community engagement subcommittee spaces that are happening 2 times per month, every other Wednesday. Jamila is convening those. These are open to any of you. You can join one meeting, you can join all meetings. It's really however you want to use the space, but just know that there are spaces to go deeper on it, all of the conversations and to provide feedback as the work moves forward. Message Jamila if you would like the invites to any of this. And okay, next slide. We also would like to ask you if you are interested in upping the full steering committee meetings to 2 times per month in October and in November, just to get through completing the state health assessment and being able to wrap up that deliverable at the beginning of 2025 and shift our attention into developing our next state health improvement plan. This is we know this is more of a commitment than many of you are going to make or are able to make, but we would like to put it here as a proposal. OHA and Met Group are happy to support this if it is a direction that the steering committee would like to go. I am not sure whether we want to. I mean, I think it would be great to hear some feedback now, just early reactions, what
I
you all
mean,
think.
if it falls within meeting our deliverable, I think that it's necessary because, you know, a lot of this stuff is use it or lose it, and we want to have this input. And if we're already kind of behind our timeline, I mean, it is a little extra commitment, but ultimately what we're doing is so valuable that if it is going to help us meet our time quotas, I'm totally in. I'd vote 5 on that.
Love it, Hannah. Thank you. And Sadie also shared in the chat that Sadie is fine with meeting more often to wrap up the work with some boosts there. Is there, let me ask if there's anyone who would not support this. Of course, recognizing some people may or may not be able to attend, but if there's anyone who really does not want to see us move in this direction, it would be great to hear from you now. So a couple more general supports, including some suggestions by Liberty. Jamila, let's do a quick poll. How are we doing on poll results? Are they still trickling in?
Oh, this is Jamila. I'm sorry. I thought it was live, like y'all could see it. So you're just staring at me with, I'm so sorry. Here it is. We have 11 votes. 6 say yes, 5 say unsure, tell us more. And I think that this is a let's talk about this more conversation.
Okay. Well, then we will just put a pin in it and come back to it. But
The funny thing about let's talk about this more conversations is it means we need more times to talk about it. I just wanted to
yeah.
point that out. I think it's kind of funny.
Great. And we completely recognize that some people may not have the capacity. I think the question is, are those folks okay if the group meets, or would you prefer that the group not meet and stick to the commitment that we like, originally shared with you all? And there was a suggestion in the chat to make the topics for those extra meetings very specific and clear. So, oh, there it is. Okay. Well, I think OHA and Met Group will need to have a little conversation about this and then bring it back to you. And I'm not exactly sure how we'll do that yet, but to be continued on this topic. And I really appreciate all of you who have stayed on all the way to the end of the meeting. And I want to turn it over to Rose to tee up some information, so a conversation around data that we'll be going deeper in next week.
Thanks, Sarah. Hi, this is Rose Harding, she, her pronouns. I'm the Data Justice and Equity Coordinator in the Office of the State Health Director. I work on the Science and Evaluation team, and it's my team's responsibility for making sure that you have a good understanding of the data that we are able to consider uplifting in the SHA. Could I have the next slide, please? So I just wanted to clarify the ask because I think that a lot of folks have not been super clear on what we're asking of you at different stages of this work. And so this is sort of what I put together to help you better understand what we're looking to do here in this phase. So what we're looking to hear from you are which of the state population health indicators were to prioritize for the state health assessment. We are going to be going through those with you all, starting at the in-person meeting this month. And for every meeting, basically through the end of the year, we will be talking about these data. I think you've already received a link to the data dashboard that one of our staff has put together for you, or you can see some visualizations of all of these data elements. But if you have not had a chance to look at them, please take a look because it will be, I think, helpful context as we are having these conversations over the next few months to be able to see what these look like. And you'll feel, I think, like more empowered to ask questions of them as we discuss them further. You'll also be able to kind of help us look at the framing of data in general for the SHA. What stories do we need to tell? What data gaps we might have, and also whether you have recommendations for filling them, because we're bringing you a lot of data that we have the power to access here at the state, but that is by no means the only data sources that exist. And if you have other data sources that you would like to recommend that are uplifted in the SHA as well, it would be helpful for us to understand what those are so we can include them. So there's really 3 data sources that we're asking you to consider. So the State Population Health Indicator Dashboard, the Healthier Together Oregon Scorecard, which are the indicators that were chosen for the Healthier Together Oregon State Health Improvement Plan. And then there's also the FAB Accountability Metrics Scorecard. These are all sort of the 3 data sources that we have pulled together for you all to look at so that you can see whether these things help you see your community and your community needs in the state health assessment. But again, like I said before, by no means are these the only data that we can use. These are just the ones that we have access to, have used in the past, and are looking at to discuss from a starting place. There will be links in the meeting materials today for you to access these. I apologize that that link was not working for you all. You should be able to access it without having kind of any specific logins or anything, but that the state population health indicators should be kept private among you all as I'll say as steering committee members, just because these are not data that have been cleaned to the best of our ability yet, and we need to have the programs do a final pass through them before we can publish them. Are there any questions about these? I realize we're at time here, so I want to make sure that you all get out of here on time, but I just wanted to kind of share that sort of where we are with the work. That's what the ask is going to look like. And this is going to be data that we all work through the next several months to review with you all. And in these ad hoc spaces, we will also be working to bring some of the subject matter experts at the program level to answer questions for you directly. Because while like me, my boss, Dr. Seidlinger, and the analyst who helps with this work, Nita Hyman, are we understand a lot of aspects of these data. The people whose programs they come from will understand them best and be able to give you like the best, most current information and feedback about what the future of some of these indicators are and how useful the perception would be from the program standpoint.
Thank you, Rose. And just before, as we're wrapping up, I just want to thank everyone and remind you all that one will send out all of these materials in a follow-up email so you'll have access to them. Please watch for the agenda and materials for our upcoming in-person meeting. And I also am going to put in the chat, and again, this is available in the materials that we'll send out, but we have a link for our feedback survey where you can also ask any additional questions. Jamila, Sarah, any closing thoughts before we wrap up?
No, thank you so much.
Looking forward to seeing folks.
Thanks, everyone.